The record.
Right, without objection. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Cummings.
And Mr. Lewis, I'm confused. Just picking up on some of the things that the chairman and Mr. Kucinich were just asking about. I can kind of understand your reaction to discovering that there was a $12 billion loss suffered by Merrill Lynch, especially when it's coming after shareholders vote to purchase Merrill Lynch. I can understand you telling the Fed and Secretary Paulson, Treasury, you were thinking of backing out of the deal. I can understand that. I think that was based upon your expertise and your experience. I cannot understand the agreement that you reported that you made with Treasury and the Fed, which they both denied to disclose the $12 billion loss. If the loss made this a horrible business deal to acquire Merrill Lynch, why'd you still do it? And I know you've told us over and over again, but but let's be frank. I mean, and I'm wondering how do you determine what is you must disclose? I mean, we have shareholders here who are concerned. You're about to go into a deal with a company that is worse off than is made to believe, and it just seems to me that, and a person with your experience, there are a lot of people in this situation, and I don't care what Paulson may have said, I don't care what Bernanke may have said, they would have said, "To hell with you." They would have said, I'm going to stand on principle, and my principles tell me that there's a MAC here, and there's a real problem, and if I go down, I go down, but I'm going down on principle. And I just want to give you an opportunity to tell us, because I got to tell you, I mean, I'm kind of concerned, because I think there are some serious credibility issues, and I think Mr. Kucinich has raised some things that if I were your lawyers, I'd be concerned about. So help me.
You're referring to the fact that that despite the fact we thought we could have a MAC, we relied on the
yeah, and I'm also going to the point that I believe that when you said you don't just go and tell the feds, and you don't tell Paulson that, look, I smell a rat here. Somebody of your stature, I could understand if you were some guy that just came off the street 6 months ago, and the last thing you did was, you were a bank teller. No offense to bank tellers, but that's all you did. You're a major player, and when you speak, people listen. So I'm trying to figure out. You said there is a problem here, but then you let these folks, I mean, and all due respect to Bernanke, all due respect to the feds, all due respect to Paulson, you're the head of this bank. You're the head of Bank of America. They're not. They may be on high, but you've got to answer the shareholders. And I'm trying to figure out why. And this is stuff that, I mean, it seems to me, if I had this kind of information, I wouldn't even want my shareholders to be voting on something and they did not have full disclosure. And I'm trying to figure out where does the disclosure come in? Why weren't things disclosed? I get the impression that there was insufficient due diligence. I know you were dealing with a crunch time. I know it was only a matter of hours that you were trying to turn all of this over. I got that. But a man of your stature, I refuse to believe that you set integrity, honesty, and transparency to the side for expediency. I just don't believe it. And I'm trying to give you an opportunity to explain this to us. Now, if you don't want to, that's up to you. But I'm asking you to.
Yes, sir. Well, if you ask, I will do my best. I don't know what else I can say other than we were influenced by the strong nature of the wording from the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, in the sense that they obviously felt very strongly that we did not have a MAC. I also I also still thought we had a strategic reason to do Merrill Lynch, despite the fact it had a financial issue. And then third, I thought the downside of calling the MAC and not winning was pretty severe. And so all of those factors were factors in me making that decision. But if I had thought that it was a MAC and all these other things didn't matter, I would have called the MAC, or we would have called the MAC.
I see my time is up, Mr. Chairman.
Let me thank the gentleman from Maryland. And let me say that as we come to the conclusion of this hearing, it's important to remember that we have heard only one side of the story today. The committee needs to hear from Mr. Paulson and Mr. Bernanke before we draw any hard and fast conclusions. I do believe in fairness. However, I do think it is fair to observe that a flawed financial regulatory process was at work in this case. We see closed-door meetings, coded messages, motives, questions, and private emails. Basically, the regulators and the financial institutions seems to be making up the rules as they went along. As Congress considers financial regulatory reform, one of the lessons from this case is that we need much more transparency and accountability in the financial regulatory and oversight process. The American taxpayers and corporate shareholders deserve no less. They need to know what's going on. Let me again thank you, Mr. Lewis, for being here today. Before we adjourn, let me state that this committee has and will continue to protect the American taxpayers and will continue to make sure the taxpayers' dollars are spent in a transparent and wise manner. Without objections, I enter this binder into the committee record, and without objection, the committee stands adjourned.